Down the field, a Lions team that will not yield. And when the blue and silver wave, you stand and cheer the brave. Rah, rah, rah! And win the game. With honor you will keep your fame. So down the field again, a Lions victory.
Another one.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Detroit Sports Flow here with BK.
And Speaks.
This week, we will be recapping the Detroit Lions' 34-10 victory over the Cleveland Browns at Ford Field. Great win here, Speaks.
Great win. We were at home. Makes a big difference. Great defensive team versus the Browns. We got the job done. It was a little closer than we would have liked, but then Khalif Raymond took the top off, and the rest was history.
The rest was history. But let's dive into the fast flow here, give you a little bit of a rundown on what this week's episode will entail. First, we will dive into the turnovers and special teams, talk about how they were the difference maker here in the victory for the Detroit Lions. The game was pretty close other than those aspects speak, so that was a big difference here.
Huge difference.
Next, we will dive into the Lions' defensive pass rush, what they've been able to do here the last couple weeks, and how they were able to rattle Joe Flacco, the quarterback for Cleveland, all week. Then we will go into the offensive flow. It seems like the last few weeks here, the Speaks, the Detroit Lions have really been clicking offensively, starting to communicate better. It's something that we see as very promising going forward.
Cohesion's gotten a lot better.
A lot better, so that's something we will discuss here. Then we'll talk about the game plan going into the game from Dan Campbell and the coaches, the way they navigated this game as opposed to how they have in other games, but we'll get into that a little bit more. And then we will dive into Jameson Williams' struggles. One of our star wide receivers has struggled to get traction early on in the season. We'll talk about, what he's kind of going through in the offense and where we see that going.
Yep.
And then finally, we'll get into our players of the game, the report cards for the coaches, and then also our predictions for this week's game at Cincinnati versus the Bengals.
Along with a special news segment, Get Your Popcorn Ready. All right, everyone, get your popcorn ready. Let's dive into some highlights from this week, and let's get her going, baby.
All right, Speaks, let's dive into some of these highlights from special teams and some of the turnovers that we were able to force this week.
Let's do it. Let's start things off with Old Faithful, the legs. Jake Bates goes 2 for 2, hits a 48-yard field goal, BK, and a 58-yard field goal, and then Jack Fox got back to his normal ways, pinning the Browns back deep like we're accustomed to seeing that we haven't seen thus far so much this year.
Yeah, that's not really on the highlights here, Speaks,
No.
but I agree with you. I think, special teams plays don't really get the love that they deserve, but the Detroit Lions needed it in this week's game. They were able to control the field position through Jack Fox, like you were mentioning, and then also Jake Bates knocking down those field goals is able to spread the lead out a little bit more there. But the other thing here, too, Speaks, is these turnovers turnovers were just absolutely massive for us.
Yep.
We were able to get the pick with Kirby Joseph, which I have no idea where Joe Flacco was throwing that ball.
Me neither.
And then we had the huge forced fumble from Hutch late in the game there to really seal it up. And then DJ Reed just makes an incredible interception down in inside the Cleveland 20 there.
Almost returned it for a TD.
Almost returns it for a TV, gives our offense outstanding field position. That was the name of the game. Control the field position, control the special teams, and we were able to do it.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week. We thought that if we win the turnover battle, we were going to win this game, and we thought we were going to force average Joe Flacco into those turnovers, and that's exactly what we did. The ball hawk himself with another interception after getting hurt, and then DJ Reed did his thing, and then Hutch, second straight sack, strip sack after never doing it before. Pretty cool stuff, BK.
Yeah, swatted it out of Flacco's hands. That was pretty cool there. But the other one speaks that we really need to mention here is Khalif Raymond's punt return for a touchdown. Swung this entire game. I know he was feeling like they were pretty close to getting that done. It was awesome to see him take that one to the house.
Yeah, that's why we put Eddie Drummond up here, a little homage.
All right, Speaks, we got to give some love to this Detroit Lions pass rush.
Yeah, we do.
And the D-line as a whole, man. I mean, since week one, they have looked like a completely different team from what we saw in Green Bay. They've been getting after the quarterback. A lot of that is because Aiden Hutchinson is starting to get a little bit more healthy. He's starting to look like his old self from what he was before the injury. But with that, too, Speaks, we're starting to get a little bit of an interior pass rush here.
Yes, we are.
Tyleek Williams and DJ Reader are both playing very well on the inside, starting to push that pocket and not give these quarterbacks the ability to step up. That's been huge for our edge rushers, and they're really getting after the quarterback here, Speaks, and it has become a strength of this team after we were talking about it being a weakness to start the season.
Very much so a strength. We lead the league in 14 sacks this year, BK. Who would have thought that we would lead the league after the awful first week in Green Bay? No chance. So we lead the league in 14 sacks, and then you mentioned two guys in the interior, DJ Reader, Tyleek Williams. That has opened everything up on the outside with Hutch. Hutch is getting healthy, like you mentioned. Al-Quaid Muhammad, and then your boy. Give him some love, BK.
Lacey?
Yes, Lacey.
Lacey had a massive game this week. He ended up with 4 pressures. He kind of filled in for Al-Quaid Muhammad while he has the injury here.
Yeah, the knee injury.
But it looks like it's kind of going to be a revolving door there over on the other side of Hutchinson all season, whether it's Davenport, Muhammad, Lacey, whatever the case is. As long as we're getting that interior pass rush with Hutch on the outside, the other guy is going to succeed because he's going to be getting one-on-one matchups. I see just about anybody being plugged in over there, and we're going to have a lot of success.
Well, and we just opened the 21-day window for Aleem the Dream McNeil. That's going to add to the interior pass rush and help the outside that much more, so more to come on that. Now let's get in this offense, BK. The Lions are averaging 34.5 points a game. That's tops in the NFL, and that's all of a direct result of Jared Goff, the general. He has the offensive line playing at an all-time high from where we started against Green Bay. He has everyone on the offensive side of the football navigating, making the audibles, doing everything he needs to do to make us a successful team, and Johnny Moe and him are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think you said it best right there. Jared Goff spent money, but the reason Jared Goff has spent money is because he's starting to get acclimated to this John Morton offense.
Yep.
I think as they continue to get more and more reps together, Johnny Morton starts to see more of these offensive weapons that the Detroit Lions have, see him more in game situations where he can use them. He's going to continue to make this thing better and better and better. And I think the main thing that I'm seeing right now, Speaks, is the way that they're moving around Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
St. Brown's our star receiver. It felt like when he was in Ben Johnson's offense, they were getting him the ball, but they weren't getting him the ball in creative ways.
No.
And they weren't taking advantage of his ability to block on the outside.
They weren't. And that's creating a lot of confusion on these opposing defensive ends because they don't know if he's blocking pocket or if he's going to go out in the flat for receiving play. So the way Johnny Moe is manipulating these defenses with St. Brown is something we haven't seen before.
Yeah, you're seeing him more in gadget situations and things along those lines, but that has really helped in that regard. But on top of that, that's also started to give this offensive line a little bit of confidence. And this offensive line is continuing to grow. They're continuing to work on their communication, get to the combination blocks. We're talking about having two very young guards and a new starting center. They're starting to click and communicate. This offensive line is much better than it was week 1. All right, Speaks, let's dive into this offensive game plan that Dan Campbell put together for this week's game. It was a little different than what we usually see. Dan Campbell's usually very aggressive on 4th downs. He's going to want to go for it, try to get as much points as possible. This week, he was much more
conservative.
Yeah. He was conservative, and his main thing was getting points on the board.
Yeah.
He was taking points where he could get them. It was one of those things where Jake Bates would be in field goal range. Usually a go-for-it situation with a 4th and 2 or a 4th and 3. But we were taking the points because we knew how good that Cleveland Browns defense was. And if we weren't able to get the points in those situations, the game would have continued to be close, whereas the Lions were trusting more in their defense. I love the game plan from Dan Campbell here. It was perfect for what we were trying to do, and we controlled it basically for the entire game because of the game.
It was perfect and perfectly executed. We knew the opponent we were playing. We knew we were at home. We weren't on the road, prime time in Baltimore. We took all that into consideration and used it to our advantage. Yes, is our MO always being aggressive? Yes, but we knew the team we were playing, we knew the quarterback we were playing, and we knew we didn't have to do X, Y, and Z to beat this Browns team. So we played the conservative route, and look at what the end result was, BK.
Yeah, completely different from what we saw versus Baltimore just a couple weeks ago, because it was a situation versus Baltimore. You know they have a high-powered offense.
Exactly. You got Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, you got to get as much points as you possibly can in order to beat the Baltimore Ravens. We knew going into this week it was not going to be the same case. We knew the defense had to be the driving force to win this game for us, and we executed it to perfection.
And when you got the hometown crowd at your back opposing to having to play a silent count on offense, it makes a big difference, and we executed everything perfectly. Dan Campbell, MCDC, whatever you want to say, great game plan. Keep doing your thing, my man. Next, we're going to dive into the Jameson Williams struggles this game. Everyone knows I'm the biggest Jameson Williams fan there is, but I'm also honest and I'm a realist. I think a lot of this has to do with miscommunication between Goff and J-Mo. They weren't on the same page, and that showed very evidently in this game, BK.
Yeah, I think they're not on the same page fully. I also think this is a little different because we're talking about a new offense that John Morton has now implemented. Ben Johnson had Jameson Williams running a lot of streaks, a lot of gadget plays in order to get him into more space and use that speed. You and I both know that Jameson Williams is probably the fastest guy in the league.
Yeah, he is. Most explosive.
Most explosive when he has the ball in his hands. I think a lot of Ben Johnson's offense with him was throwing the deep ball, doing all these different things. They talked about it in the offseason with Jameson Williams, how they were going to open it up a little bit more with him running more intermediate routes, him, being more of a part of this offense than just a deep threat. I think that's causing a little bit of problems with the chemistry with him and Jared Goff. I'm not really worried about it going forward. We know what his ability is once he gets the ball in his hands, and we're getting close to him seeing the ball more with the target share that we saw this week. I think the drops that he had this week were bad. The one over the shoulder
has to come down with that. Unacceptable.
He's got to catch that one, and then the one in the red zone, he was kicking himself about too. I thought he should have got that one too. But, these things happen, and I think he'll bounce back. But I'm not hitting the panic button on Jameson Williams just quite yet.
Yeah, and neither is Jared Goff. Jared Goff said he has the utmost confidence in J-Mo. He comes into practice day in, day out. He shows what he's capable of. They're going to get back on track. It was just a bad day at the office. He caught his first pass for 13 yards and caught his last pass for 27 yards, finishing with 40 yards. I expect Goff and J-Mo to get back on track next week for Cincinnati for a big game.
All right, Speaks, let's dive into our players of the game from this week's matchup. My offensive player of the game, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. continues to be unbelievable offensively this year, Speaks. Ends up catching 7 passes for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. The new formations, like I was mentioning, where they're moving him inside to be more of a blocker, has created a lot of space for him out there as the opposing defenses are looking at him in that light as much as they are as a receiver. That's opening a lot of lanes and throwing lanes for Goff in order to get him the ball. He's been outstanding, had a great game this week. Defensive player of the week, Jack Campbell again. He was elite against the run, playing great in pass coverage, ended up being PFF's one of their top 3 linebackers graded this week. Absolutely spectacular performance. He's starting to remind me of a linebacker called Luke Kuechly out of Carolina.
That's high praise, baby, but I like it.
All over the football, and the guy's making plays left and right. Loving what I'm seeing out of Campbell. Who do you got?
Offensively, I got Gibby. Can't you see how your runs just hypnotize me? He had 12 carries, actually 15 carries for 91 yards. Gibbs did his thing on offense, and then 1 TD. He averaged 6.1 yards a carry, 24 for his long. Gibbs, Sonic, he got the load share this week opposed to Mott. 91 yards, no complaints there. Then on the defensive end, I have Hutch. He had 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and then 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen. He's never done it before. 2 forced fumbles. He had the forced fumble last week and the forced fumble this week. I think it's safe to say Hutch is finally back. He gave us a little scare when he got the wind knocked out of him. He just said he couldn't breathe. Get up, Aiden, get up. He got up. We're good to go. Aiden Hutchinson, Defense Player of the Week.
All right, Speaks, let's get into our report cards here.
Let's do it, baby.
I'll start us off. Dan Campbell, head coach. I'm giving him an A-. I thought he had a great game plan coming into this thing. He executed it to perfection. They were able to get the job done with that game plan. Kelvin Shepard, defensive coordinator, I'm going to give him a B. I think it's absolutely incredible what he's done with this defensive line from what we saw week 1.
Yeah.
However, they did give up over 100 yards rushing to rookie running back Quinshon Judkins. I didn't love that too much, so that's why I came in at a B.
Yep.
But I thought overall he's been coaching outstanding here for the last 3 weeks. John Morton, offensive coordinator, I'm going to give him a B-. I thought we ran the ball pretty well against a great Cleveland run defense. However, I didn't think we passed the ball very well. I'd like to see us improve there. And then Hank Fraley, our offensive line coach, O-line has gotten better each and every game, and the combination blocks are really working. Outstanding from Hank Fraley.
I'll feed off that. Hank Fraley, I give you an A. You have those young guards playing better and better each and every week. You have the consummates, tackles, Penny Sewell, Taylor Decker doing their thing. A. Hank Fraley. Then I'll get to the top of the ladder. MCDC, I give you an A. Situational football versus an inferior opponent. You knew not to be ultra aggressive. You stuck to your guns, even though our blueprint and MO is to be aggressive. You dialed things back. You kicked field goals instead of going for it. Great job. And then Kelvin Shepard, I think you ascended yourself as one of the best young defensive coordinators in all of football. I'm giving you a B+. I really like what you've done with the interior push, and we've gotten better week after week. And then Johnny Moe, I give you a B-. I think we have some work and some things, some kinks to work out, communication between Goff and Williams, and that will all be worked out this next week versus Cincinnati, so let's go.
One other thing here, too, Speaks, just to give Hank Fraley a little bit more love. No sacks allowed in the last 3 games.
That's huge. That's never been done in Detroit Lions history consecutively.
All right, Speaks, let's dive into our predictions for this week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. We got the Detroit Lions as 10-point favorites entering into Cincinnati to take on this Bengals team. Over-under set at 49.5 for the game, and it's a 4:25 kickoff there on Fox. My prediction here, Speaks, I think the Bengals have not looked very good defensively, and then ever since Joe Burrow has gone down with the injury, the offense has not looked very good either. I think the Bengals have been looking for answers. They scare me because this is
it's a trap game.
It's a trap game, and it's a must-win for the Bengals.
Yeah.
However, I don't think their defense can stop our offense, and I think our pass rush is going to get to Jake Browning a lot, their young quarterback. I got us winning here 38-20, Speaks.
Yeah, no Joe Burrow, no bueno. They don't have a shot. I got the Lions winning this pretty single-handedly, 42-13. They'll be lucky to get those 13 points. I just think we are better in every facet of the game. Defense, special teams, offensive line, defensive line. They're not getting any push with Hendrickson. I just do not see this being a close game, and I think we really excel and we really get things back on track. It's going to be more of a game like we had against the Bears and we had against the Ravens on the offense side of the ball. I felt like this last week, it wasn't much so that until Khalif Raymond scored, then we kind of felt like we finally had the game won. I think the game will be won before halftime is done.
I can see that. I'm also of the school of thought that the Cincinnati players could be close to giving up. I think they know without
a lot of
Joe
frustration
Burrow,
on those sidelines.
Yeah, they're not a very competitive team, but this is a must-win for them. So this will be a very interesting game to watch.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Detroit Sports Flow with BK and Speaks, you blue Kool-Aid drinkers. We will be back next week to recap the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Detroit Lions. Have a great night, you filthy animals.
Go Lions.
Go Lions,
Tigers.
baby. Woo!